Welcome to another edition of AVRant. I'm Tom Andry, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AVRant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. And holy macaroni, we have so many questions, so we'll get through as many as we're able.
We were caught up, Rob.
I know.
We were caught up. We had emptied the inbox. We were caught up. I thought, this is the week. This is it. Mother's Day is coming. Nobody buys AV stuff for Mother's Day. Doesn't happen. I thought this will be the week that we'll come in. We'll go 15 minutes and be out. Later, dudes. 2 weeks from now, we'd be like, oh my God, we still only have 4 questions. What are we going to do? And then the podcast will slowly peter off into nothingness. After 10 years. It kind of is just about our 10-year anniversary, by the way.
Very soon.
Very soon. So, 28 questions.
30.
It's a lot more. 30? I got
30.
through 28.
Yeah, well, I only wrote up 28 because I'm like, we're not going past 28, so.
Yeah, we're not going past 28. This is AVRant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. Get your questions answered. All you do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. You can also hit us up on our website, www.avrant.com, facebook.com/avrantpodcast, youtube.com/c/avrant. All those places. If you want to contact us directly, it's rob@avrant.com. His Twitter is @firstreflect. Tom@avrant.com. My Twitter is @avrant_Tom. Our producer is Austin. Austin monitors the question at AVRant question line. And he also does our videos. You can reach him at Austin, TEN Pond. That's his Twitter handle. I guess his email is just question@avrant. You can also catch him on his podcast, the We Watch Movies podcast. It's a podcast about the proper size material and use of flasks.
Okay.
Flask. I will say, based on the We Watch Movies podcast, I did find a flask of the appropriate size.
Very nice.
I did. I've
It
got
served its purpose.
it. It has. Would you like to see the flask of the appropriate size, Rob?
All right.
All right, here it goes. Hold on. I got to take my headphones off.
Get your water while you're at it, although he can't hear me since he took his headphones off.
Here we are.
All right.
We Watch Movies podcast. Flask. Appropriate size.
It's not a hip flask, that's for sure.
It is, you have to have big hips for this. If you're not watching YouTube, you have no idea what we're talking about. Just to let you know, that is an abnormally large flask.
Yeah.
Somebody bought it for me as a gift. It was awesome.
Gotcha.
We Watch Movies. Check it out. All about flasks. Okay. Let's get into this podcast. I don't have much news this week. There's of a personal nature. Rob, anything going on with you? No?
Nope.
Yes?
Nope.
No? Good. I'm going to start off by thanking our listeners of the week. First two guys went to www.avrant.com, clicked on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link. They're supporting the podcast financially by giving us a PayPal donation. That's Brandon and Tyrone. Thank you, Brandon. Thank you, Tyrone.
Yeah, Brandon, Tyrone, thank you very much for those donations.
We also want to thank James, who wrote to Outdoor Speaker Depot, to let them know that his in-ceiling Atmos speaker purchase was thanks to us. And Tara told Accessories for Less that her Marantz SR5011 purchase was thanks to AVRant.
Yeah, James, Tara, thank you both so much, and congratulations on your purchases. Hope you enjoyed them.
Absolutely. I'm resisting the urge to make a big deal about the fact that we have now additional proof that at least that up to 3 females have listened to this podcast.
Making the assumption that Tara is female, so that's a girl's name, right?
Whatever.
I don't know.
I
might be wrong.
Huge crush on a girl named Tara when I was in high school. Huge crush on Tara. I'm telling you, if you're the same Tara, don't look me up. I'm married. I got 3 kids. Don't you? Nothing for you here. All right. We got some news here. It looks like via Nick, Rhythmic has started shipping their FV18, an 18-inch 900-watt ported subwoofer for $1,700 with free shipping in the continental U.S. It's 21 by 33 with 22 inches deep. So it's 21 by 22 and it's 33 inches tall.
Yeah. I don't have a current picture. They haven't posted on their website yet. So presently on YouTube, I'm showing a prototype version that they posted over on AVS Forum.
I'm sure it's all of the pretty.
Idea.
I'm sure
18-inch
it's
driver.
very pretty. 18-inch driver. No way to dress that up. They're claiming an extension down to 12 hertz. And Outlaw Audio has added the Ultra X13 subwoofer to their lineup. A 13-inch 1,000-watt model for $1,500. It's 17 by 23, and it's 27 inches tall. So again, we're trying to go with the smaller footprint, the taller sub.
Yeah.
I personally think that's a fantastic idea. I've always loved that idea. As a guy who has cylinder subs, I think you can understand why I would love that idea. But for real, dude, it's a good idea.
It's a downward firing design, as is their Ultra X12, which remains in the lineup. So they're going bigger, louder. That's what's happening there.
Yeah, it has a variable tuning for max extension down to 15 hertz, or a THX Ultra certified mode with a 20 hertz extension.
Yep.
Wow, people still get that THX certification, do they? I guess
Yeah.
that's a thing. Way to jump on the bandwagon right as the bandwagon is driving off a cliff there. Outlaw. Good job, guys. Some more Dolby Vision Ultra HD Blu-rays have been announced. Power Rangers from Lionsgate and Resident Evil Vendetta from Sony Pictures is going to be in the works. I have to admit, I did not know that they still made Resident Evil movies. Does that go straight to Ultra HD Blu-ray? Was there a theatrical release of this
I
one?
think so, yeah. So far, the collection of Ultra HD Blu-ray titles is Dolby Vision Ultra HD Blu-ray titles. It's leaving a little bit to be desired, but hey, Despicable Me 1 and 2, Power Rangers, and Resident Evil Vendetta, that is your collection so far.
Not the movies I would think that would really benefit from high dynamic range. You know, maybe the Despicable Me movies. I mean, they have some colors and some whites in there, but Power Rangers, Resident Evil, how bright do they get? Really? Anyways, don't care. Not going to see either of those two movies. I might see Power Rangers. I heard it was not as bad as the trailers made it out to be.
Yeah,
that's what
from me.
Oh. Was that from you?
Well, then maybe I
won't see it. Yeah, okay. Carl, these are comments. Carl shared an article from the LA Times that details IMAX's growing popularity amongst some of the best-known Hollywood directors for upcoming blockbuster movies: Dunkirk, Transformers: The Last Night. It's not going to be the last night. There's going to be more nights. They're liars. Don't ever believe anything in the Transformers title. Avengers: Infinity War. I guess part 1 and 2. I guess
they've retitled it, so the first one's just Infinity War, and they're holding the second title secret for now.
And Star Wars: The Last Jedi were shot either entirely or mostly using IMAX cameras, and 8 movies have been specially formatted to make use of the taller IMAX screens. They say this is a way to attract audiences and compete with other large format theaters. What other large format theaters?
Oh, well, there's like AMC's own proprietary thing. They also just recently partnered up with THX. That was some more news from Carl. So,
I'm going to be honest with you, dude. I could...
There's the Barco Escape thing with the 3 projectors with the screens that go to your sides. So there's some other out there, but IMAX is trying to get out ahead and actually get their cameras used for the entire movie. So that's the big difference.
Yay. Whatever. Josh, after we joked about bowing out the walls. Bowing, I know. I saw the L in there. There's no L. Bowing out the walls and knocking down pictures using a pair of SVS PB16 Ultra subwoofers. Josh wanted to share his friend's system that uses 4 enormous subwoofers and 23,000 watts of power to literally shake the main supporting wall of his house at 142 dB. 142 dB seems... Now, I'm no expert, but that seems excessively loud to me.
That is quite literally dangerous. So, yeah, hopefully hearing protection.
I'm a little unclear as to what we're seeing in this picture. Are you showing this picture right now?
Yeah.
I'm a little unclear because
that's just
it
the
looks
front,
to me...
That's the front sound stage there. So those are just the front speakers to give you an idea.
With the horn-loaded tweeter, and he's sitting like 6 feet away from these monstrosities.
Well, it looks a little bit more than that from perspective. But yeah, no, he's got some other absolutely enormous subwoofers and then a whole rack of amplification to go along with it. So, yeah, sent in a short little 15-second video, which is just a cup on a table table, you're seeing the results and hearing everybody's screams in the background when the bass actually goes off and physically moves the entire house. So it can be done. Congratulations.
Can we all just admit that that screen is far too small for those speakers? Can we just say that that's an issue right here? I do appreciate the speakers. I mean, they are big.
Yes.
And black. And fine. All right. Josh pointed out that Dolby is now offering Dolby Atmos test tones on their website that you can download onto a USB stick. They're in MP4 format, and they go all the way up to a 9.1.6 configuration, which I think is fairly awesome. Have you downloaded them, Rob? Have you tested them?
Well, Josh was kind enough to actually send me the disc, the physical disc. So I haven't bothered to download the test tones because I have them on the disc. But most people weren't able to get the disc. That was a trade show thingy.
Right.
Yeah, now you can get those test tones online. That's great. We'll have a link for that, avrant.com, in the show notes.
Love it. Great. They're just test tones, though, right? Not sweeps?
Just test tones. Yeah.
Well, at least you can see whether or not your speakers are working.
That's right.
That's always a reassuring thing for some people. All right, let's get into these questions because we got lots of them. Earl recently bought an Oppo UDP205. Isn't sure what the brightness and contrast setting should be for, quote, correct, unquote, HDR viewing. He did a test watching of Deepwater Horizon. It's the Marky Mark one, right?
That's right.
The Marky Mark one, yeah. With both settings at max level, and he felt the results looked excellent, but he's concerned that other movies might look different depending on how they were graded. Is there an industry standard for HDR color grading and therefore a set of correct settings that will work for all HDR movies? He doesn't want to have to adjust settings for each and every movie individually. Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
It doesn't really sound like you should turn the brightness and contrast all the way up. That's usually not the correct setting. Usually it's all the way down. Usually.
Well, so to answer is there an industry standard? Absolutely, there is. There absolutely is an industry standard, and with high dynamic range, we now have this completely new thing when it comes to describing how to get from black through gray up to white. Which they call an electro-optical transfer function, and that means that the value that's stored in the video corresponds exactly to a nit light output level. That's if you want to follow the industry standard, it is this exact one-to-one correlation of value in the signal to light output that you're supposed to have. Therefore, you really should leave the Oppo's settings at their defaults. Put them back to the factory defaults. That's really where they should be for HDR. Now, the problem is that electrical optical transfer function ends up creating quite a dim-looking image. They're expecting you to have a very dark room with only about 5 nits worth of ambient light, which is like barely anything.
Right.
That's the industry standard. So if you want to be really strict, you need a very dim room, and then you set your television, because pretty much all of the HDR TVs are the ones that we're recommending anyway, the LG OLEDs, the Vizios, Samsungs, Sonys. If you put them in their HDR standard viewing mode, you almost don't have anything else to do. Out of the box, they're all quite accurate. I mean, yes, it's technically possible to get even slightly more accurate, but really there's not much else to do other than put an HDR standard. But what most people are finding is they do that and everything looks too dim. Like everything looks too dim because most people don't watch regular standard dynamic range content at that dim a level. So I think what happened there is he probably has a little bit more ambient light than only 5 nits in his whole room. So when he maxed out the settings, everything got brighter, and he thought that looked better. But you really shouldn't do that in the Oppo. The Oppo should be left at its defaults. If you want a brighter image, you should use the HDR bright mode that's available in almost every HDR TV. Or if that isn't available, you set the television into its HDR mode, and then you can adjust the brightness and contrast of the television. You shouldn't really adjust the Oppo. You can adjust those settings on your television to at least make things in the shadows visible, because that would be nice. You don't want everything crushed to absolute black.
We don't know if he has a direct view TV or not, right? We don't know what he has.
I don't know what the television is, no.
Because a lot of times you can just adjust the backlight a little bit.
That's also true.
Just up the backlight setting so that that's basically your adjustment for your room. That's the way I use it, at least. It's an adjustment for the room. I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna, my room is doing this, so I'm gonna bump it up a little bit because of
Yeah,
that.
but this is actually useful, Earl. If you leave the Oppo at its default, set it back to its factory defaults, that gives you a good reference point. It's already at the reference point for HDR, and therefore, if it looks dim to you, and it's perfectly fine if it does, because almost everybody has a room that's brighter than what the industry standard is, then make the settings adjustments in your television.
Right. All right. David on Facebook. David's home theater is in his basement. I kind of resent people who have basements. In Florida, I was outside working on my sprinklers, and I dug down like a foot, and I hit the water table. Just like,
no basement
water
for you.
No basement for me. His room is 13 by 19 by 7.5 feet. Okay, so it's got a short ceiling, which is fine.
A little bit.
But it has an opening going upstairs with no door. He already has a Marantz SR5011 and Yamaha in-wall and in-ceiling speakers in a 5.1.2 Atmos configuration. But he's looking for a subwoofer to buy, and his budget is quickly running out. Well,
can understand.
Close the door. You don't let it run. You gotta keep it in the room with you. He wants his theater to sound as impressive as possible. He's invested a lot of time and effort into his theater room, so he doesn't want to end up skimping on the bass. But if he can get away with spending as little as possible on the subwoofer, so much the better. He was considering an SVS PB2000, but also looking at other subs that people are selling on Craigslist. So what should he buy? You should buy a door.
Yeah, actually, that's
if
the
you
most cost-effective.
If you want to spend as little as possible, you should buy a door. Have someone install it for you, and then you could buy the smallest subwoofer that SVS sells, just about, and it will do fine in this room.
Yeah, because 13 by 19 by 7.5, that's not a gigantic space to pressurize.
No.
If it were sealed, I mean, if it were sealed. Enclosed. Yeah,
because whatever's going on upstairs, I'm guessing it's going to a hallway, which is going into a living room or something like that, right? So now you need a subwoofer that can fill up all that space, which frankly, no one in your house really wants that to happen. So you want really good bass, you don't want to skimp on it, but you probably can't afford and don't want something that will give you the bass that you want for this home theater. It's just basically your home theater room and every other room that doesn't have a door between it and you.
Yeah.
So buy a door, which costs like $30, and get somebody to install it for $100, so $130, and then buy a
PB1000 from the outlet.
That would be good.
You know that
PB1000 would do too.
I have to mention, he's saying he doesn't want to skimp on the bass at all. It's tough to actually get extension down to 20 hertz. It really is. And the PB1000 is about the least expensive sub out there that genuinely plays down to 20 hertz.
Right.
So if you can get one of those from the outlet store, that's about the best deal you can get with a door. Now, let's just assume he can't do a door for whatever reason. We'll take it as is. This is the situation, and it cannot be changed. If that's the case, a PB2000 is a good choice because it's still not going to pressurize your entire house, but at least with SVS's subs, you can't bottom them out. You can't break them. So
that's a big sub for that small room.
It is.
I mean, just physically large. So if you're going to do that, I would go with a PC.
Right, the cylinder,
2000,
which is the same price. The yeah, but at least the cylinder comes with the isolation feed as well. The ported box does not.
The floor space, the footprint is very small. So I would go with the PC 2000 if I were you.
But either way, we're kind of leaning towards SVS in your situation, either because it's the cheapest way to 20 hertz extension, or it's a subwoofer that can't be bottomed out when you're trying to pressurize essentially your whole house since you have no door. So.
Yeah. Roberto. When Roberto got home a few nights ago, expecting to enjoy an episode of Iron Fist, I'm so sorry, sir. You were not going to enjoy an episode of Iron Fist because it's really not very good.
I still haven't started watching it. I have to see for myself.
The first couple of episodes are... Actually, no, it's really not good. I wanted to say the first couple episodes are not bad, but they really are bad.
Well, at least they already make in the trailers for the Defenders, they're already making fun of him, so I guess they figured that out.
Yeah, it's not. It really, and I don't think it's the actor's fault. I don't think that. I mean, there's always the budgetary concerns too, because the Netflix budgets aren't huge on these shows. But the real problem seemed to me was continuity of directors. It just didn't seem like they were having the same director from, or a vision throughout the entire thing. I mean, that's what makes these shows really work, is that you can see that there's a storyline that's going through, and this thing was all over the place, and none of it was all that good. But I like him. and I'm hoping that Iron Fist season 2 will be, well, it certainly can't be worse. If it was a black screen for 8 straight episodes, it would still be better than what he put out there. Anyways, he was going to watch an episode of Iron Fist. He instead discovered that one of his kids had pushed in the tweeter on one of his B&W 685s.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I had a child that did that once. And I don't know where he's living these days, but he is very regretful of what he did. No, honestly, this has happened to me, and it happened on the cone on like the dust cap on one of my woofers.
Right. Like that to me seems quite easy. I mean, a dust cap, you could literally put a little bit of masking tape on there. Don't push it down hard, but a little bit to get just a little bit of, tacky sticky. And a dust cap you can quite easily pull back out. A tweeter, depending on what the material was, though, they're very delicate.
If it's a silk dome tweeter, which is what I think those
or even if it's a metal dome one, you can end up with a crease in it. So.
Yeah. So is it worth to have it fixed since it's possible? It's possible the kids just do it again. Now, do the B&Ws not have grills? Is that the problem here?
Maybe it just pushed right through the grill because the grill gives.
So. That's true. Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But is it worth it to have it fixed? I want to say no. I mean, are you hearing a problem?
Right.
Because believe me, tweeters that are not functioning correctly, they aren't shy about it. They're like a 1-year-old who wants something. They will let you know, and there will be no bones about it. Everyone will turn around and look at it and say, "What is wrong with that child?" Your speaker, if it sounds okay, I would leave it alone. Now, if it's buzzing or hissing or flapping or something, then you have to have it fixed, and more than likely B&W is going to want to fix both the tweeters.
I mean, these are an aluminum dome. If that's been pushed in, I'd be trepidatious about, because you can get little powder flakes that come off of a metal dome tweeter if you put something sticky on there to pull it back out. You'd almost want to use, what would you want to use? A little bit of suction
vacuum.
Well, not vacuum.
And
I'm all about.
Suction.
I'd be tempted to put my fist around it and use my mouth.
Well, that's what I would do for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, that would be the only way I would do this. I know you're gonna have to get up and close to these bad boys. You're gonna get to know your speakers in a way that you never knew that you were going to. You are going to just now take it slow. The speaker doesn't know what's happening to it, and it's going to be very confused by what you're doing. But you're just going to have to wrap your mouth around that tweeter and just. And that's how I would try to fix it. If it's not doing anything bad, leave it alone.
Yeah.
Don't do anything. But if it is doing something bad, try that. And if that doesn't work, call B&W, and they're going to want to fix it. Anyways, he'd like some speakers that are more kid-proof with electrostats that fit the bill. He needs a little recommendation.
Well, after one touch, they might. You can get quite a shock off of the stators of an electrostatic speaker.
Dude, this is really. My kid got, you may be one of those parents who's like, I'm not gonna yell at my delicate flower. I yelled at my delicate flower. All right, the kid got it. Now, I take him out back and beat him with the switch. No. I'm not that kind of parent. But I did let him know that not to do that again. I have 3 boys. My first boy did it. My second boy might have tried or gotten close. And anytime anybody got close to the speaker, they just got shooed away. And honestly, in a couple of years, it's not going to be an issue.
Yeah, then they grow up, and that's the end of that worry.
I don't necessarily think that you need to be going out. And you think that you're irritated that he pushed in the tweeter. Wait till he knocks over electrostat. You're like, it's a 3,000. Yeah, you're going to be real mad. So I don't know that. And if they've already done this to one at this point, just don't upgrade until they're old enough that you don't have to worry about them doing this nonsense anymore.
Right. But to answer the question directly, I have a few options that might, although some children might just see this as a challenge. There's nothing. If you had a cover that really protected the tweeter, then it would be like sound opaque, and that wouldn't work. But Emotiva, they have their folded ribbon tweeters, which have like little plastic grates going across it. Although something very small could go in there and puncture that folded ribbon. So perhaps not the best. It does also have a rounded dust cap, so that could get pushed in. Although again, dust cap easy fix.
Yeah.
SVS, their tweeter has kind of a metal mesh grill going over it.
Doesn't
Yeah.
is it Kef that has a tangerine waveguide thing, or is that my
Kef has the
speakers?
tangerine waveguide, yeah,
And that's sort of
little
protective
bit.
as well.
NHT also, they have kind of a, I don't even know what to call it. I mean, like a
I'm gonna look at it.
crisscross thing. You can see a picture of it on YouTube, but
It's two little kids wearing the clothes backwards and rapping.
right, not quite. But yeah, I mean, there's something over that tweeter anyway, and the mid-range driver for that matter.
What am I
Yeah,
looking at here?
those are potentially some options. I mean, it's
That
kind
is-
of a waveguide thingy. I don't know,
yeah.
lens. I'm not sure what that is. But there's
Uh,
something over the tweeter anyway. But I mean,
yeah,
essentially, that's what I'd be looking for, right? Something over the tweeter. But again, if this is a child who would just
There
take
is-
that as a challenge to figure out a way
Yeah.
to poke something in there,
there is no real solution for this. There's grills, there's metal mesh grills. There's some
Right.
speakers have those. I
Right.
generally don't like those grills.
yeah,
I'd rather have like a normal speaker fabric. But then again, if speaker fabric is not going to stop anything, my Veris Grand speakers, the grills are like nigh impossible to get off, and the speakers don't look that good with them off. So it just dissuades anybody from doing anything like that. But I've got speakers in this room that don't have the grills on them, and I never had a child try to push one in, at least since that very first time, and that was just a dust cap, like I said. So if it's not making the noise, I wouldn't worry about it. But yeah, just kind of fuss at them until they stop. How about that? That's my parenting advice. Fuss at them until they stop. Let them know what will happen the next time that something like this happens. I wish it hadn't been a tweeter, but it happens all the time.
Yeah.
It happens all the time. Russell has a Marantz SR7010 set up for a 7.2.4 Atmos. When hooking it up, he decided to run pre-outs for the top front and top rear speakers to an old 7.1 Pioneer receiver he's using just as an external amp. He figured this would take a tiny bit of the amplifier load off the Marantz. However, he was surprised when going through the setup menus for the Marantz that there was no option for that speaker amp configuration, only an option to set the top backs to the external amps. He wasn't excited to climb back behind the equipment right then and there to reconfigure things, so decided to go ahead with the rest of the setup, and it all seemed to work just fine, including the Odyssey setup. He was getting sound through the top front speakers, and Odyssey seemed to set the right distances and levels. He's been running it this way for 6 months, and it still seems fine, but it's still nagging at him that things can't be quite right. Why would even have the amp setup options if the pre-outs for all the channels just work regardless of how you set them? Is it just so that the system can shut off the amps it doesn't need to use internally? Is he worrying over nothing? Well, if Odyssey set everything up correctly and you heard test tones to the proper speakers, yes, you're worrying about nothing. But to answer your question, I think that those pre-outs are hot like all the time.
they
And
are.
the only time that you have to select them is when there is an option. Like some of the pre-outs can be one or the other. So you need to tell it which one to send. So that's why it's working the way it should.
Yeah, this is a little bit of frame of mind that's
Yeah.
actually coming into this. So first of all, you don't have anything to worry about. The SR7010, yes, all of its pre-outs are always sending out a signal. So you could connect 11 external amplifiers and just run things that way. That would be fine. That would work. You wouldn't have to
Yes.
set up anything. You could just collect 11 external amps and off you go. It'll power all 7.2.4 externally. This SR7010 has 9 amplifiers built in. Those 9 amplifiers are always going to be assigned to something.
Yes.
Now, you don't have to worry about it shutting amps off or something like that. Power is drawn from the amplifiers. It's not pushed out there into nothingness. So yeah, it has these 9 amplifiers built in. And the reason there is this option is because it has 9 amps built in, but it's capable of processing 11 speakers. So 2 of those speakers must be powered externally. There's no way to power all 11 of those speakers just with the SR7010 all by itself. So what that settings option is there for is to say which 2 out of the 11 speakers must be powered externally.
Right.
That's what that setting is there for. Optionally, you could power all 11 externally if you wanted to. So that's all it is. So in this case, you're saying, okay, my top backs must be powered externally. but everything else could be powered internally if I wanted to, or I could power them externally by connecting it to the pre-outs. I have that option.
Right.
Yeah, that's really all it is.
Yeah, there you go. So everything's fine. And
It is.
you don't have to check anything. You have to worry about it. And the most important thing here is this idea that amps get shut off. You know,
Right.
amp is basically a well of power that can be pulled from. If nothing pulls from it, it just sits there doing nothing. It's not off, but it's not doing anything, so it's essentially off. You know, the power is still in the transformer, it's in the capacitors, it's just sitting there doing nothing. So as long as you're not drawing any power from it, it is quote unquote off. Jonathan was reading about HSU's new CCB8 speakers, which look an awful lot like those Rocket studio monitors. Like when I first saw them, I was like, dun, 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 double take. But they, the Rockets have tweeters in the normal place. Anyways, he was a bit confused by the following statements from Audioholics. This comes from Audioholics here. The tweeter is mounted directly behind the woofer and uses pole pieces of the bass driver as the throat of the horn and the cone of the woofer as the horn mouth. While this design is sometimes seen in pro audio speakers, it is seldom used in home audio. Jonathan is having trouble picturing the driver configuration as described. Can we clarify it for him? Yeah, it's a coaxial driver, dude. The tweeter's in the center of the woofer. That's all it is.
Yeah, and it's actually behind. So if you picture, if you're looking at it, there's like what looks like a dust cap, like you would have on any normal woofer. Well, that dust cap is concealing a hole. In any cone driver, there's actually a hole in the middle of it because it's a cone. It's a cone without a sealed tip at the top of it. So there's a hole there. So instead of that hole just being a pole piece that air moves through freely, they stuck a tweeter in there. And in this case, they actually put the tweeter some ways down the throat that's there to essentially make it into a compression driver. So that's why they're saying this is rarely seen in home audio, more often seen in pro audio, is a compression tweeter, which has a tweeter behind a hole the hole has a smaller diameter than the diameter of the tweeter. So any of the air that's moving out of the tweeter gets compressed into that hole and then comes shooting out of the horn at the other end. And that gives you higher efficiency. That's what that does.
With the cone of the woofer as the horn mouth, basically, then the woofer itself, is angled up like a funnel.
Yeah.
And it, disperses the sound a little bit.
Yeah, so instead of having a separate throat and horn that's just passively sitting there doing nothing with a tweeter behind it and then having a separate woofer, they're like, well, let's just use the woofer as the throat and the horn. So it's a coaxial design with a compression tweeter embedded in the middle of it.
So we ask, why is this design sometimes seen in pro audio but seldom used in home audio? Is it maybe a near field listening thing? It's actually exactly the opposite. It's a far field listening thing. A compression tweeter allows you to get a lot of sound with not as much power. So this compression driver configuration is not used in home theater because, frankly, it's not needed.
Yeah. But you do see it in speakers like from JTR. Or from Reaction Audio.
We've talked about this podcast before.
Yep. Yeah, and it's quite common in a high efficiency speaker design. A horn is simply a driver in the throat, and then the horn goes out from there. A compression just puts the tweeter a little farther back and closes down the throat of that horn a little bit smaller, and that gives you even more efficiency. So that's all that is.
Right, so HSU's manual has some confusing statements as well, he says. They say the speaker has better controlled directivity and that it is less sensitive to placement than most other speakers, yet they also detail a 1:4 ratio for sidewall, floor, and back wall placement that they say will result in the speaker being 22 inches from the sidewall and 7 feet from the back wall if you use the recommended 36-inch stance. This sounds like a very odd placement to him, 7 feet from the back wall. And they even explain that this will result in the smoothest possible response, but it isn't mandatory, he says. So should he attempt to follow this advice? Does it apply to any room? Is he misreading something? No, I'm sure you're reading it just fine, dude. You're a grown man. You can read.
I don't know when they say back wall, whether they mean the wall that's behind the speaker or they mean the back wall of the theater. That wasn't really made clear. It doesn't actually matter. It's 7 feet away from one of the walls.
From a wall. Yeah,
from a wall, but
it's
that's still way into the room for most people.
that is kind of silly, to be honest with you. I don't really
It
know
is.
why they're suggesting this.
And that's all to do with bass. That's all to do with bass.
Yeah,
And
and
HSU is a subwoofer company, so what the heck are they?
I don't know. I mean, they're
You would expect
what
them to
would
sell
be
a
the
subwoofer.
optimal placement for this speaker, or maybe even any speaker?
Right.
Maybe not even this speaker, but any speaker. What's the optimal placement? Like as far away from any wall as humanly possible, as close to you as humanly. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, okay, but what's the placement I'm gonna do? They're like, we don't really care. Do whatever you want.
Yeah, they were essentially
That's what
talking
this
about,
is.
They were essentially talking about room mode, not so much cancellation, but just making sure that the modes are as separate from each other as possible. So you're going to get one room mode vertically, one room mode left to right, and one room mode front to back. And if you use this placement, you'll reduce those modes overlapping each other as much as is possible. But that's all to do with bass. So a lot of this
Yeah.
can be fixed in the crossover between the subwoofer and your speakers. And it is where I don't know. I mean, I guess it's like, oh, here's an interesting tidbit. We'll include it in our manual for no real reason. So I agree with the confusion. It's an odd thing to even mention, but I
It's like
really would
something
not worry about it too much.
that may be true, but is in
Right.
no way relevant.
Right.
I guess is the way I
Yeah.
would describe this. It is true, but not helpful.
Yeah.
So
And yeah, if you had a really wide room, would you put them only 22 inches away from the sidewall? Well, of course not. Maybe you'd put them
Not.
7 feet away from the sidewall and 22 inches from the front wall.
Yeah.
It'd still work.
So HSU also says that the frequency response is flattest 15-degree off axis, with the speaker axis is aimed up to cross in front of the listener. So how does this impact HSU's ideal placement? Where the heck are you supposed to sit when you listen to these speakers? You're supposed to have this perfectly shaped room with no furniture in it, and these speakers probably equal distant from you and each other, and crossing in front of you, and all this, and blah 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 blah.
Right.
blah.
The 15 degrees off axis is interesting because most speakers are referenced to on axis response.
Right.
Most of them say if you pointed these things straight at your ear, so if you looked at the speaker, you are looking right at the front of the speaker, bang on. Normally, that is where you get the flattest measured frequency response. And then there's a window to the left and right and vertically up and down where that response remains quite flat, but then eventually you get outside of that window and it starts to roll off. Well, in this case, they're like, if you essentially what they're saying is if you listened straight on 0 degrees on axis, it would probably have tipped up high frequencies. It would
Yeah,
probably
that's
sound
what
a
I
bit
think, too.
shrill. Yeah.
That's
And
what
that's
I'm
quite
guessing.
common with a compression tweeter too. That would be expected.
Yeah.
So what they're saying is basically to get the flattest response, you'd want to toe the speaker in so that instead of it being aimed right at you, it's aimed 15 degrees off to the side. But they're saying instead of having it, like, let's say you started with the speaker facing straight forward in the room, right? You would be some degree off axis, right? Because you're at the point
Yeah.
of a triangle, and then
Yeah,
you'd be
20, 25,
yeah,
something
you'd
like
be
that.
some
Depends on how
degree
far
off
away you
axis.
are.
So you could toe that in so that it's aimed straight at you. That would be 0 degrees. Or you could toe it in a little bit, and then you'd be 15 degrees off axis. But they're saying keep towing it in so that you're actually 15 degrees off axis on the outside face of the speaker rather than the inside face of the speaker. So that if you were to draw a straight line from the faces of the two speakers, those two lines would intersect and cross in front of you rather than somewhere behind you. So normally when you tow in your speakers, if you drew a straight line coming out of the faces of those speakers, they'd intersect, but probably somewhere behind you. They'd intersect right at you if they were aimed straight at you. They're saying tow it in even further.
And my guess
that's what
behind
they're
this is because they're not assuming that you're sitting on an individual seat by yourself. I think that most people would probably do them 15 degrees off axis, where you're on the inside of the speaker. So the speaker is basically
Right.
shooting behind your head.
Right.
But if you're on a couch with 3 seats and you're in the middle seat, that's having the speakers basically pointed very close to right at the people on your left and right.
Correct.
By crossing them in front of you, you don't have to worry about any of the other couches getting
Yeah,
or any other
everybody's
seats
kind of
getting-
off axis.
I think that's the reason.
Yeah.
I think that's the reason. Which to
And
me
it also
kind
seems
of
like
suggests.
they're trying to avoid sidewall reflections as much as they can.
Yeah, that could be too. These could be very directional speakers, I would think, as
Yeah.
well. So, they're trying to avoid some of that, and that's fine. But then, why the hell did you build a speaker like this one? To be honest with you, there's a reason why we don't do this stuff in home audio. It's because while these speakers can sound really good if you can place them just perfectly for you, these compression tweeters, they're a little finicky.
Yeah.
And you're seeing that with these wildly weird instructions. There's nothing wrong with
Although
them.
they're probably
I'm sure they
worth
sound
following.
very good.
Yeah.
I would follow them. I would follow them in some way. I don't
And
know
in
if I'd follow
Jonathan's
them
email,
everywhere.
he was trying to use that angle recommendation to somehow work out like distances or what the listener triangle should be. It doesn't really have anything to do with that.
Right.
The placement is still whatever distance in front of you, however far apart the speakers are. The 15-degree off-axis stuff is all to do with how you angle the speaker, how you toe them in.
Right.
That's what that's talking about. The degrees off-axis really has nothing to do with the distance from you and apart from one another. That's two separate things.
So on a different topic, Jonathan was window shopping at his local Best Buy. He overheard a salesperson talking about HDMI cables and lauding the purity of the copper and the $120 cables versus the lowly $75 cable.
Right.
First of all, I'm not buying either of those cables. That's a lot of money for a cable. Better be like really super long. Jonathan forced himself to walk away, but should he have said something like mentioning the existence of monoprice? He likes having a Best Buy around, so he doesn't want them to go out of business. And since they've dropped prices on big ticket items to compete with Amazon, it seems like that accessories are the only place where they can profit. Is he a bad person for not interjecting and informing the customer? I don't believe you're a bad person for doing that, Jonathan. I think you're just fine. They don't want to hear what you have to say, or they wouldn't be here. They wouldn't be at Best Buy buying cables if they had any interest in random people telling them which cables to buy. They could go to a forum and get that done. They could go online. They go to Yahoo Answers and get that done.
Or they could just go to Amazon and it would show up.
Yeah, but they've decided not to do that. They want to support their local Best Buy. Let them do it, dude. That keeps them in business that much longer so that you can buy their open box specials for...
That said, I can totally sympathize because I come across these situations too. Like you're hearing wrong information or just, bad advice in a topic that you know a lot about, and it's tough. What do you do? Do you interject or do you stay out of it? I tend to stay out of it most times. If someone asks me, I'm going to tell them what I know.
That's exactly right.
Heck, sometimes I'm going to be wrong, right? So
it happens. I've been climbing for a lot of years. I was trying to think about my son's 13, so about 12 years I've been climbing. On and off, not for 12 straight years. And I've got more than my fair share of knowledge of how to climb correctly. So walking through the climbing gym and hearing people, especially brand new people, talking about how to do something or watching them do it, it's like it's almost painful. Mm-hmm. You almost want to go, oh, seriously, dude, are you is that what you just did? Or is that what you're thinking was going to work? Like, how does gravity work on your planet? Because on my planet, it pulls straight down. And wherever you are, apparently it doesn't because you think that was going to work. And I would love to pull them aside and, walk them through how to do it. And I've taken many people who have been floundering as climbers and started climbing with me, and they ask for help, and they go and, jump 3 grades in 3 months. That's a pretty big jump. It takes some work and it takes a lot, but it's a lot of technique that I can impart. But I just don't go running around spewing. What they say at the climbing gym is spewing beta. Beta is telling people how to climb. No one wants that. It's the same situation. No, they're not interested in what you have to say. Just let it go. And then sing the song, Let It Go, as you go away. So there you go. Different Jonathan. So that was Jonathan something. I don't know.
F.
B? F? Is it F?
Our regular contributor.
Our regular contributor. It's different Jonathan S. So this was a different one. We'll see if his questions are as long as our regular Jonathan. Jonathan is finalizing the building plans for a new house. I have a feeling that this is a bad idea to do a Jonathan back-to-back with a Jonathan, because how is Austin going to know where to split the...
By listening carefully.
I guess he will. Jonathan is finalizing the building plans for a new house. The plan is to put a theater in a corner of the basement. Also, the plan was to have the 2 corner walls being the foundation and the other 2 with double drywall and green glue for a well-sealed, well-isolated, and base-pressurized theater. But then, his wife and the architect now think instead of a door, a 6-foot wide open entrance would look just perfect and inviting. Build the box with the size of the sub that you will need in order to pressurize that entire space. And then walk it around and say, where would you like to put the subwoofer and its mate, which will be the exact
That's
same
right.
size,
Yeah.
in this open space that you have now created. Or we could put a door here and buy this subwoofer and show them a little box.
And open the door when you want it to look open.
There you go. So he asks, is there any type of door that he can use to cover the 6-foot gap to seal, or at least mostly seal the room so he can achieve good base pressurization, but will only open up so the theater can look inviting when not in use? Pocket doors? Is that an option? Can we do pocket doors? Or
what
like those big sliding
Yeah.
things that they do?
What I was
these
thinking
days?
is he's already going to be building this double wall. Now, first of all, that tells me they wanted soundproofing to begin with, so not having a door makes no sense.
Zero amount of sense.
Either you have a double wall and a door, or you have no door and no double wall, because that double wall is serving no purpose
Zero
if you don't have the
purpose,
door.
yes. Yeah.
But since the plans already included this double wall, that's usually the thing that stops people from having the sliding door that conceals within the wall, because you have to
It's a
build
pocket
double
door.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would have a sliding door that conceals within the wall. You're already building the double studs, so you're like way more than halfway home on that. And then when that slides into the wall, it's like you have no visible clue that there's even a door. So if they want that open look and they don't want the look of French doors or just a large door or something like that, this completely solves all that, and you already had the double wall in place. So that's the solution to me.
He asks if the door isn't completely sealed, he understands it will lower as STC.
Sound transmission coefficient.
That's it. Rating. So sound will leak both into and out of the theater, but from a base pressurization standpoint, how sealed does the door need to be in order to be of a benefit? It doesn't have to be that sealed, dude. It's got to be closed. I mean, a normal door is not waterproof or airproof or whatever. Right. It's got gaps underneath.
And around the edges.
Around the edges. It just has to close.
Yeah. Just keep in mind, sound is pressure. That's right. That's what it is. It is pressure. So, it's this. You can just everybody can envision. Somebody's talking to somebody else in a bedroom. You're in the room next door, right? They have the door wide open. You can plainly hear them talking. They close the door. You can still hear that they're talking, but it's muffled now, right? And then if you completely sealed that door, maybe you wouldn't hear it all, or it'd sound really, really quiet. That's the exact same situation. If you close a door and it still has a gap underneath it, if you were to fill that room with water, it would leak, but it would leak slower than if the door were wide open, right? So that's what you're going for. That's what sound is doing. There's more pressure inside that room with the door closed, even if there's a gap underneath. The more sealed you can make it, the better. But certainly having a 6-foot opening compared to having something closing that off with a small gap underneath it, huge difference, right?
Yeah. So I'm looking at the plans here, and if you look at these plans here with the opening, it's actually going to go upstairs, probably into the living room and everything. So we're talking somewhere in the order of, we'll say 10,000 cubic feet. I think that's probably
at least.
I always say that that's a conservative estimate, 10,000 cubic feet. So go with Power Sound Audio and just look at their biggest sub.
Yeah.
Look at two of those, do the measurements.
Or put in a door.
So if he can get some amount of base seal, will a single SVS PC2000 be enough for a 16.5 by 23 by 9 foot, 9 foot, yes, 3,400 cubic foot volume of a theater room if he can get a door in there, 30 foot. Yeah, I think a PC2000 would be all right.
Yeah, output-wise, you'd be fine. Output-wise, but you should get two, not, this is important, not for the purposes of making things louder, because that's not what the two subwoofers is about. It's for the purpose that you're putting some effort into this theater. It's a nice size theater, 16 by 23. That's really nice dimensions, by the way, for a theater. I'm assuming you're going to have more than one seat in there. That would seem odd to me to have a 16.5 by 23 foot theater with only one seat in it. If you would like every seat in that theater to be a good seat, or at least most of them, then you're going to want at least two subwoofers. Output-wise, PC2000 is a great choice. That is completely sufficient for that. But get two of them.
Yes. Dos.
Yep.
One in the front right corner, one in the back left corner. Good to go.
And I like the choice of the PC. The cylinder takes up less floor space. Very nice.
Yeah, very good. Mark. Talked about Mark last week. Mark is the fellow who replaced his NHT Super Zero speakers with RBH Impression Series towers and didn't really feel like he achieved an upgrade. He now says he's warming up to the Impression Series speakers. The more he listens to them, he does like that they sound fuller. He had previously tried to run just the towers in direct mode. When he did so, he heard distortion, but that distortion went away when he used stereo listening mode instead. We had speculated the distortion was caused by extremely loud, deep bass, but distortion was present even at low listening levels. So what could be the cause of the distortion? Is this Emotiva UMC1 somehow filtering out something when he says it's a stereo listening mode rather than direct? Is the distortion just the original unprocessed signal? If stereo, direct usually is 100% of the original signal.
Right.
No bass management whatsoever, which means all the bass that you're supposed to be getting to that is in the signal, in the stereo signal, is going to the towers, no matter what. If you have it loud or not, it doesn't make a difference how loud you have it. Okay? So it's still trying to recreate those sounds.
Right.
They may be trying to recreate it low enough that you can't really hear it, but the drivers are still trying to do it. Can that cause distortion? Absolutely. Okay. Stereo, on the other hand, usually has bass management, which means it will then take whatever your crossover point and send all that to the subwoofer. Ergo, no distortion, no weird noises. I gotta believe it's the bass management. That's what
I think so, yeah. Given the description and saying that when he sets it to stereo, all that distortion goes away, to me that indicates that the speakers aren't just distorting like no matter what. Apparently, something that changed when you went from direct mode to stereo mode took the distortion away, and what changed was bass management. Now the bass below whatever the crossover frequency you chose is being redirected to your subwoofer instead of into those towers. Now, those Impression Series towers, as big and as huge as they are, and they look all imposing, they don't really play much below 50 hertz. But much like Kef's towers that we described, they will try, and when they try to, they will start to distort. Yeah. So that I think that does explain it. I think that's what's going on there.
I believe so as well. PJ of the Absorptive Cats. PJ had a picture with a cat in it, and he was asking about absorption, and I asked how absorptive
that
was
his
cat.
Pillow of a cat, his absorptive cat.
He's a very, very cute cat.
I like that cat.
All right. PJ has wall-to-wall carpet in his basement after hearing us talk about decoupling recently, he decided to fold a thick furniture pad and put it under his PB1000 subwoofer to see if it made any difference. With the sub on the pad, it was too tall behind the screen, but if you turned it on the side, it was fine. So if you turn the sub on the side, it was fine. But is it fine? He reran the Odyssey, and it sounds great, but is it really okay to operate a PB1000 with it on its side?
Yes.
Yes. Question 2. He is also considering a second sub. He wouldn't really have space at the back of the room for another PB1000, but a PC2000 might fit under the window. Is it a good idea? The room is 33 feet by 12 feet by 8 feet and enclosed. Could a SB1000 or a PSB2000 pair well with his PB1000? No, get the PC2000 and lie it on its side. Right? Is that what he's talking about?
Right.
He's talking about putting it on its side, right? Behind the couch?
You could. Yeah, you absolutely could.
That's what I would do.
Yeah, given the size of this room, this is a very long room, right?
Yeah.
I'd opt for ported in this case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
PC.
So, I mean, I know a second PB1000 would be totally fine. But if physically that isn't going to fit where you have space for it and the PC2000 will, and you're okay with the price, then I would absolutely opt for the PC2000. All of SVS's subs, totally fine to lay them on their sides. Absolutely fine. They're very nicely well braced inside. That driver's not going to fall out or anything like that. Totally fine to lay any of them on their side.
I would never think not to lie a sub on its side. I would question any sub that if lying on its side would somehow damage it because of poor internal bracing. I mean, because inside, the pressure from the driver and the air that's inside there is pushing in all directions. So if you can't lie this thing on the side, then what's the deal? You got to be able to lie on the side.
I mean, don't lie it on the driver or on the amplifier knobs, but other than those two sides, any other side is fine.
Yeah, I guess there are some subs that have downward firing driver, 2 side firing drivers,
2 passive radiators, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, or 2
and
passive
the
radiators on the side, amplifiers on the back, and then there's a control panel on the front.
Yeah,
I've got a sub like that. Then you could do the top or you could do the bottom, but either one would be fine. So anyways, he also replaced the pictured couch with a lower back one, and after rerunning Odyssey, he immediately heard a difference. Not a question, he just He just thought that was cool. So that was cool. So I'm not surprised. Yeah.
All large objects in your room make a difference. They make a
Yeah,
difference
and
to
if
that
he's
sound.
got a higher back and his head is sitting on there
Right.
and it's blocking all the side and rear information, I am not surprised that he heard a difference there. Not surprised at all.
Agreed.
John. John was reading an SMPT. I'm going to say SMPT.
Yeah.
SMPTE, which is whatever there it is. SMPT presentation on cinema audio standards by Brian Vessa, the executive director of digital audio mastering at Sony Pictures. It's in it. Brian says that the surround should be calibrated to 82 dB and the subwoofer to 91 dB. Is this right? Should John recalibrate his speakers to these levels? Are you showing the slide?
I'm showing the slide.
So if you read the slide, it says after that you have done the proper setup, you basically goose the sides, surrounds, and the subs
Well,
up a little bit. Isn't that what it's saying?
yeah, well, sort of. I mean,
Performed
that would...
after electroacoustic calibration is complete with the same microphone setup, wideband pink nose, again injected the speaker system at reference level, one speaker at a time, and then they goose this thing up. That's what it sounds like to me.
So the interesting thing is that reference level in the cinema sound system is negative 20 dB full scale.
So that's what, 85?
85 dB for the speakers, theoretically 95 dB for the subwoofer.
Right.
So if you're looking at that subwoofer figure, because later on in the presentation, I don't have the slide for that, but later on in the presentation, they're like, the subwoofer should be able to exceed 110 dB. Ideally, it should be able to hit 115, but it should be able to exceed 110. So they're saying if you send the subwoofer a negative 20 dB full scale signal, it should be able to hit at least 91 dB with that signal being sent to it. Because then if you add 20 to that, you'll be at 111, which is greater than 110, right? So that's a bit of confusion there because the signal is being referenced to dB full scale, and full scale for the subwoofer channel, the LFE dedicated LFE subwoofer channel, is 10 decibels louder than any of the speakers. Now for the surrounds, saying 82 instead of 85, well, they're expecting you have multiple surround speakers because this is a cinema standard, not a home standard. Right. So yeah,
so they're cutting it down a little bit because
they're cutting it down a little bit because they're expecting more than one speaker to be playing out of any of those positions. So all of this, John, is a cinema standard. When they're talking about a medium-sized room, they reference that a medium-sized room. They're talking about a 200 to 500 seat room. That is not a medium-sized room in a house. That is a medium-sized room in an auditorium.
It's a medium-sized room in Chris's house.
Well, yeah.
McMansion Chris. That's his bathroom.
So all of this, you must realize, is for the cinema. Yeah, for full-size cinema, not for house settings. So you wouldn't want to go for this. You wouldn't want to set your surround speaker to 82, your subwoofer to 91, your front speakers to 85. The test tones that are built into your AV receiver are meant to measure at 75 dB, all of them. That's what they're meant to do. So this is a separate thing.
Yeah, so McMansion Chris does have a medium-sized room for his coats, and he has 200 seats in there, and he puts a coat on every seat rather than having hangers because he feels like keeps the lines better.
Yep. Man,
Can you imagine?
Chris's place is just getting bigger and bigger in our imagination.
Can you imagine that?
Time.
A 200 coat. What is in this room? My coats. Why are there all these seats? For the coats. Can we sit in the seats? No, that's not for you. I can just say he's like Batman. He's going to be Batman by the end of this. All right. There's also discussion. We're back to our original question by I forgot who's even asking this. John. There we go. There's also a discussion about the X curve and applying different high frequency EQ depending on the size of the room. With very large rooms, larger than 5,300 cubic feet. Using the X curve. I feel like maybe he didn't get that number right, but anyways.
Well, that was a different presentation. It wasn't this one. It was a separate one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Using the X curve, medium-sized rooms, 23 to 5,300 cubic feet, being flat up to 2 kilohertz, then rolling off at a rate of 1.5 dB per octave, and near-field speakers being flat. So does that mean we should EQ flat if we have a room smaller than 2,300 cubic feet?
Now, if you're going by the Brian Vessa discussion, you're EQing flat in anything that we would consider a home theater. He did have this other presentation that was getting into a little bit of this X-curve stuff. Now, the X-curve is there because if you were 2/3 of the way into a 500-seat auditorium and you measured everything perfectly flat, you would need crazy output from the tweeters of your speakers. And really the problem isn't that flat response would even sound that bad. The problem is that they would just start to distort horribly. They do. That's just what happens. So instead of that, they have this gradual roll off in the high frequencies because you're talking about long distances, big cubic footage, and then a whole bunch of people sitting in there absorbing high frequencies too. So they just roll off that high frequencies in a full-size cinema, essentially to avoid distortion. That's mostly what's going on. Again, it's cinema versus home. In the home, on home releases, on Blu-rays, Ultra HD Blu-rays and that, most of the time now, they are remastering that sound for the home mix. They aren't giving you the exact same mix that they sent out to the theater. They're remastering it for home as well. So your AV receiver, all of your channels should measure 75 dB on your C-weighted SPL meter when you're sitting in your seat. And the EQ, if you want just flat out accurate sound, should essentially be flat. You in every cinema sense are very much near field in anything we would call a home theater.
Right. Yeah. Alvin previously had two Sony AV receivers, one with 7.1 but no HDMI, and one with HDMI but 5.1 only. He was connecting them together to create a 7.1 setup. We suggested looking for an affordable 7.1 AV receiver with HDMI, so he wound up buying a Denon AVR at $19.12, and he loves the results and says thank you.
Glad you're happy with it.
I'm glad you're happy with it too. His surround speakers are up high on bookcases in the rear corners of his room, and his surround back speakers are on lower bookcase directly behind him. He says he hears pretty good separation between surrounds and surround backs, but he has always thought it could be better. The 1912 has the option of using front heights instead of surround backs, but it's Dolby Pro Logic 2Z, not Atmos. So should he ditch his surround backs in favor of surround front heights, or is there something else he could try? I would totally do that. I gotta be honest with you.
Oh, would you? Okay.
I would. I know he says he's hearing the separation, and there's quite a bit of distance between them. I would move my surround speakers. Well, would I? I mean, I really want him to move his surround speakers forward some, but he's not going to do that. So that's
looking at the diagram of his room, we could see why. Because basically, where you would want to put the surround right speaker, there's a doorway. And his couch is pushed all the way to the left of his room. So if you put the surround left speaker on the left wall, right. If someone were sitting in the leftmost seat of that couch, that speaker would be right there, like right there, which is probably fine for his primary seat. But it is a bit of a challenge. You'd either end up with your surround speakers slightly in front of the couch, which isn't the end of the world, but not really ideal, or you sort of end up where he has them, which is in sort of the rear corners of the room, which makes sense. I can't say that doesn't make sense.
I would consider taking the surround back speakers since they're small anyways and using them as front heights and checking it out.
Oh yeah, I would absolutely give it a try because in the setup that you have, your surrounds are already behind you. So if you were to mix down 7.1 soundtracks, it's not like you lose those sounds that are supposed to be in the surround back channels. They're still going to be playing, and they're still going to be coming from behind you. I would absolutely give front heights a try because, why not?
Yeah, I would.
Yeah. I
have to scroll past the pictures of his room now. Hold on. It takes a second to scroll. His computer's doing lots of things. He has two subs, a JBL PSW1000 with a 180 degree phase switch, and a Paradigm PS1000 with a variable phase knob. His bass sounds pretty good and even across his seats, but it actually sounds best in his hallway and kitchen. He has no idea how to set the phase for each of these two subs. Can we offer any advice? Listen from your kitchen in the hallway, I guess.
No, that's not our real advice.
No, it's not a real advice. No. Okay, so you can't do anything with the 180 degree phase switch. It's
leave it at zero. Leave that one at zero.
Pretty much useless. So what you would do is you would take your Paradigm PS1000 knob, and you're going to play a bass sweep through your system.
On repeat.
And then you're going to adjust the knob a little bit and listen and adjust the knob a little bit more and listen. Adjust the knob a little bit more. And if it clicks every time, then, just get yourself a little chart, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if it doesn't click, it has lines, then, the number of lines that you go. And if it doesn't have lines, then I don't know, dude. You're out of luck. But
really hoping, I mean, he really only has this one couch in here. That's his seating area. So thankfully, it's not like he has to listen everywhere in this room or something.
No, he
like
doesn't.
that.
He just has to listen from each one of those seats.
Yeah,
and try
so
to,
from
to
each
see
of
how
those seats.
even it can be.
Yeah, and what you're hoping for is you're playing this bass sweep on repeat. It's gonna have some humps and dips in it. That's okay. That can be taken care of with equalization later. But what you're trying to do is when you sit in each of those 3 seats, you get the same humps and dips from seat to seat. Now, what you can do that really helps here is use a marked sweep. So if you go to audiocheck.net, where I like to make my bass sweeps, they have an option there to make it marked, which means that every 10 hertz in the sweep, it'll make an audible little squelch sound. So that way you can count the squelches and know approximately where you are. You'll know that you're between 80 and 70 hertz or between 50 and 40 hertz, something like that. So what you're hoping for is similar humps and dips in all 3 of your seats. That's the goal, because that means uniformity. And once you have uniformity, if you equalize it, then it will be the same in all of your seats. So you can have linearity and uniformity. That's the goal. On the other hand, if you really only care about one seat, don't worry about it too much. Just equalize for that seat, and the other seats get what they get. But the point of playing with the phase is to get uniformity.
I question, to be honest with you, what he means by best bass in the hallway and stuff.
Yeah, that's
I
true.
think what he means by loudest, I think he's saying, wow, it's just rumbling in here. I'm like, yeah, that's not good bass. That's loud bass. And loud bass is perfectly fine when it's called for. But if you're getting even bass across your seats, basically what you have is a bass trap, like a bass sink that's down your hallway into this kitchen. Yes, the bass is bouncing around back there, and that's all you're really hearing. You're not hearing any of the other stuff. It's more balanced in your room, and it sounds more even in your room. I might think that you have the best bass in your room. You just have the loudest bass elsewhere.
Could be.
In which case, maybe don't worry about this so much and just go with it. Because honestly, I mean, as far as the room itself is concerned, he's placed his subs pretty well. He could cheat that PSW 1000 forward a little bit to be closer to that bookshelf, and it would be practically mirrored to the PS 1000 that he's got.
But it isn't really diagonally opposite because you've got this opening.
Because of the opening. That's right.
Because of the opening.
But I'm tempted to think that he's probably got pretty good bass right now. So he says his room is 12 by 15 by 8 with sliding glass doors near the front left and the opening to the kitchen on the rear right. Do we have any suggestions for room treatments? Anywhere you can, I guess, is usually the suggestion that we have. You have plush furniture. You have
carpeting.
Essentially carpeting. You have a diffuser right behind your head in that bookshelf that's behind you. In front of you there, you've got the big, long curtain there, which is probably hiding something, a window or something, who knows. But behind that, you could put some insulation if you really wanted to, some sort of absorption. You probably don't want to cover up the weird glowing red shelf of knickknacks up there, but you could fill that up with insulation and put some black speaker cross, and you have a nice big bass strap up there.
It would be a bass trap up there. I don't know how much bass trapping he needs with an opening to this room.
He probably doesn't need that much, but yeah.
I mean really, and this isn't vital, but I mean, you probably have some fairly strong first reflections coming from that glass door to the left and what looks to just be a flat wall with pictures hanging on it to the right. Now, obviously, putting a panel like hanging on that glass door isn't an option, but you can get the freestanding type of panels. That's about other than bass trapping in the top corners of the room. That's about the only thing I might do here.
Yeah, I'm in complete agreement. You got a bookshelf on your left there. You're not gonna be able to do anything. I mean, on your right side.
Yeah.
I'm looking from the left of the picture. So getting a removable or movable panel that you can put
freestanding
next to your left front speaker, so that it catches that first reflection. That's about all I really see in here.
And how audible that's actually gonna be,
It's
I don't know. I don't think it's gonna make a huge difference.
We didn't do anything for this dude. Sorry, man. I mean, we're like,
that's
don't
the
spend
proper
any
advice.
money. You're fine. Yeah, I think you got a pretty good home theater.
Yeah, we're
just
not
by
gonna
looks.
give you a bunch of do this for no gain. What's the point of that?
Yeah,
So,
I think you could try that, but I would I don't know, get like a bunch of real heavy, or maybe like a moving blanket or something like that, or just have somebody stand up over there and
yeah, and
do it
see
and
if
say,
it makes any
see if it makes any
worthwhile
difference for
difference.
you. I mean, because it might really not. It might not. Bob has finished upgrading the audio in his theater. The old Polks replaced with EMP Techs. The old Bic acoustic subwoofer replaced with the Outlaw X12, and the old Yamaha replaced with the Denon X4300H, which is not the receiver from last week. It's a newer one. His primary source now is an NVIDIA Shield, which he uses to watch OT over-the-air TV with an HD home run and Google Live. He watches stuff on Sony View and plays MKVs via Kodi, as well as stream Netflix and Amazon. Audio from Kodi sounds fantastic. Netflix sounds pretty cool. And live TV channels sound light and empty with almost no bass. That's far for the course. But the real problem is the Sony View, or is Sony View. The volume on the View is about 10 dB higher than the mid, and the mid bass is way too high, often making male vocals overpowering, especially after turning down the receiver volume to the level to match the other sources. He knows the Denon can adjust levels per input, but since he's really only using a single sound source device, that doesn't help. Can he keep the convenience and speed of using the Shield while achieving balanced audio at the same time?
This is a challenge.
I have no idea.
There's one thought I have, which is that Sony View right now is only sending stereo audio. So all that's coming out of there is stereo PCM audio.
Okay.
And I'm guessing at this, but it sounds like Bob might be using the automatic listening mode setting, which means whatever comes in gets played as it is, right? So if 5.1 comes in, gets played as 5.1. If stereo comes in, gets played as stereo.
Right.
That sounds, because his description of having this big mid-bass thing is quite common when it just defaults to the stereo mode. So if that's the case, Bob, there's a couple of things. First of all, the X4300H allows you to set a different setting for a stereo-only setup. There's actually a stereo-only settings menu within the sound setup menus. And you can make some changes there if this is your preferred way of watching, which is, stereo comes in, that's what I use, is the stereo
turn
listening
on, like,
mode.
DTS or something. Or
Yeah, that is the other one. And maybe he already is, so that might all be moot. But you could use one of the upmixing modes.
Right.
To expand whatever you're watching to make use of all your speakers. Now, doing that isn't going to fix the difference in level, though. The difference in level is kind of what it is.
Yeah.
So other than just turning your master volume down when you watch Sony View and turning your master volume back up when you watch the other sources, there's not a whole lot you can do. But that whole mid-bass hump in the Sony View, it's quite a common thing that when stereo PCM is coming in and you're using the automatic listening mode, so it switches to the stereo listening mode, very often it does sound overblown, and you can adjust that in that dedicated stereo sound settings that are in the X4300H. So that could be a partial fix, and then it's just riding the volume knob a little bit.
Excuse me. Bill, I would also... Bob. Bill's next. I already scrolled forward. Yep. Bob, I would also suggest maybe a macro, like on a Harmony. I mean, it's not a perfect solution, but every time you turn on the View, excuse me, a Sony View, I will stop sneezing. I'm allergic to Sony, is the problem.
Right.
You could have it turn the volume down like 10 dB. Now, when you switch inputs again, you'll have to turn it back up manually, but at least it won't be too loud.
There's one other thing you could do, which isn't a great solution, but you could actually turn on Odyssey Dynamic Volume. Not to its highest setting, but just put it on its lowest setting, because that kind of just dynamically compresses everything and evens out the sound. You could. I mean, if this bothers you more, I mean, give it a try, right? There's nothing harming in experimenting. So turn Odyssey dynamic volume on, put it to its low, or try all the settings that are there, but put it on its lowest setting and give it a listen, because if that bothers you less than having to ride the volume dial, then there's your solution, right? For some people, it's going to bother them more than riding the volume dial, some people less. So it's worth an experiment anyway. So three things you can try.
Bill, Rob's going to read your question. My answer is get a Harmony remote, and I will be back after I blow my nose. All
right, sounds good. So Bill needs a universal remote for his theater. He has an Epson 5040 UB projector, a Denon AVR X3300W AV receiver, a Roku Ultra, and an Xfinity DVR from Comcast. So all the equipment is located in a separate room. He has no need for full-on home automation, but he would like something that can easily switch between his different sources and the different modes with a single button push, and he wants to also be able to have it like set to the correct input, and the projector goes to the correct input, the receiver goes to the correct input. Most of all, though, usability is very important. His wife needs to be able to use this when Bill isn't there, so things need to work as well as possible. So I agree with Tom. The immediate thought is not just a Harmony remote, but a Harmony hub. Right? You want one of the ones that is a Harmony hub, because the Harmony hub is what lets you put the hub, which blasts out all the infrared, Bluetooth, radio frequency commands, whatever you need it to blast out. That hub sits there and blasts it out. That can all be in your separate room with the rest of your equipment. And then you can use an app on your smartphone. They have the Harmony Companion, which is a remote that is nothing but solid buttons, or the Harmony Elite, which is one that has a touchscreen on it as well.
Which is very nice. My parents
each of those go up, and so you can get the hub just by itself for $100. Then if you have a smartphone, you just use the app to control that. You can get the Harmony Companion that comes with the hub, that's $150, or you can get the Harmony Elite, which I think is $300, $350.
Yeah,
it's a big pricey jump to get that big touchscreen thing, but might be worth it. That's the immediate one. That's the immediate thought. For really, really good usability that you don't have to program yourself.
Dude, Harmony is so easy to program.
Exactly. But I just want to put it out there that he might want to look into Control 4, right? Because Control 4 is going to cost a lot more. You aren't going to be able to program it yourself. You have to call your installer every time you want to change something, which some people find to be a really big hassle. But I want to put it out there in case he wants to go that route. Our recommendation is for a Harmony
If you're
hub.
balking at the $350 for the Harmony remote,
right,
you're not going to like the prices of the Control 4. Believe me, you're not going to like it. So I was thinking we might power all the way through all these questions, but I'm getting sicker by the second. So we'll see how far. Yeah, I didn't think it was going to be a problem, but I have been feeling worse and worse all day long.
Yeah.
Sorry about that, guys and gals who are listening. I imagine there's a legion of women right now all shopping for Mother's Day and looking for good deals on subwoofers, because in my world, that's something that chicks like, I think. I don't know. All right. Tate was thinking about buying a 65-inch or larger LG OLED TV for the family room. He wonders, though, would it be overkill? Nope. He loves home theater, but he is visually impaired. Okay. I take back my nope. And while he wants the best for his wife and son, he knows they aren't very critical about picture quality. Also, there are 3 big windows in the room that let in a decent amount of light, despite having shades on the couch, and love seat face each other, not the TV, so off-axis viewing is important. They're about 13 feet away from the TV and sitting to either side, never directly in front.
Right. That's the big sticking point.
Yeah.
Is the sitting off to the sides.
Yeah. Okay. So if they don't really care about TV and you're blind or visually impaired, he's visually impaired. We don't know he's blind.
Right.
He's not blind, right? Is he blind? Do we know?
I don't know.
Okay, we don't know. All right.
But
so let's pretend he's not. Let's pretend he's got some vision. It's just shapes and colors or something like that. I know a lot of people like that. Yeah. I totally would not spend the money on an LG OLED TV for people who don't care about it. I would get a 1080p or a 4K or Vizio or something nice, but not something I would worry too much about.
When you're never gonna be seeing it on axis, you're always gonna be to the sides. I mean, we don't know how big a deal the money is, right?
That's true. We don't know.
Now,
that.
I'm thinking, doesn't make sense to spend $8,000 on a W7, right?
Right.
That doesn't make sense, but you could still get an OLED. What I'm really thinking, because he says he'd like HDR10 and Dolby Vision as far as, future proofing goes, but if the people who are really going to be watching this TV for the most part aren't super picky about it, I wouldn't worry about that too much, right?
Get
What
an
I'm thinking
series from Vizio or something like that, like the 2016 models.
it's the off-axis view. I'm thinking get an OLED, but get one that's 2 years old. Go back to the 2015 models. Go back to an EF 9500, because those you can get for a 60. So he's 13 feet away. You're gonna want to go for the larger size if you can,
Right,
the
right,
65 inches if you can. But you can find those for about $2,200, right? Now $2,200 still expensive, but it's not so outlandishly expensive compared to the LCDs. It's not the $4,000 of the current, B7 or C7 65-inch model. You can find last year's OLED 65-inch B6 for about $2,800 right now. But
Yeah.
I wouldn't even bother with that. I go back 2 years and get the EF 9500. That's what I would do in this situation, because the off-axis viewing of those LCDs, if you're never going to be on axis, it is poor. It's poor.
It sounds, it sounds like there's mostly daytime TV watching going on here. And if that is the case, I want to suggest that you could get a bigger picture and not have to worry about your off-axis response at all by getting a projector. That is.
But he's got all this light.
I know, but that is a light cannon with like one of those special screen things.
Do that.
Whatever.
I can't agree with that one. Okay. Well, you've got my vote for an OLED, but get an older one so that it's cheaper. Yeah.
Nick heard us describing using a single subwoofer output to feed two subwoofers and then adjusting the phase knob on one subwoofer to get the uniform bass across all of the seats. In fact, you just heard us describe it again because we just talked about it.
That's right.
Nick tried to imagine himself doing this procedure and figured there's no way he'd remember exactly which phase setting created exactly which peaks and dips at exactly which frequencies using just his ears and a bass sweep. So, wouldn't it be better to get a measurement microphone and use Room EQ Wizard to measure and plot each location and phase setting? That way you could visually compare and find the most uniform response across all seats, correct?
You are correct.
Yes, you're right. Go on.
Yeah. I just want to go back to the original point, though, which was we were reticent to have mentioned the marked bass sweep the last time we talked about this. So in this very podcast earlier, I mentioned that the marked bass sweep really does help, because you want to be able to say, oh, okay, in this seat with this setting, I noticed there's a hump between 60 and 70 and a dip between 40 and 50. Now I know that, all right? So now I go and sit in my seat to the left, and I go, oh, I still hear a hump between 60 and 70, and I still hear a dip between 40 and 50, but then I sit in my seat to the right, and I go, oh, over here I hear a dip between 60 and 70 and a hump between 40 and 50. Uh-oh, that's not the best setting, right? Because I have complete non-uniformity. So all we're looking for is to find a setting that gives you pretty good uniformity, and most people have maybe 3 to 5 seats that they care about. So you sit in each of those 3 to 5 seats, and you use a marked bass sweep, and it's not too difficult to go, okay, I know where the humps and dips are, generally, and do they remain in those same spots when I go sit in my other 3 to 5 seats? So it's not too bad just doing it by ear.
No. He asked, could you run Odyssey with just one subwoofer, get its distance setting, then run the Odyssey a second time with just the second subwoofer and get that distance setting, and then use the difference between the two settings, the two distance settings, to figure out the distance in the phase that you ought to use? No, that totally doesn't work, dude.
I mean, in a way, that's how sub-EQ-HT functions, by setting the two distances independently and then EQing together.
That's yes, but that's not what we're doing here. What we're doing here is you have non-optimal subwoofer placement. Okay, so what we're trying to do is, by using the phase knob on one of them, is to change virtually, I guess, hypothetically, I guess, I don't really know what the right word is, change how the bass is interacting with itself in the room.
Yeah, we're changing the wave pattern by altering the timing of when they're firing.
And if you think about it this way, what you're doing is virtually moving that sub or the sub around the room. By changing its phase, it's now seeming like it's either closer or further away than it was before. And by doing that, you are tricking the bass into interacting in different ways. You're not really tricking it. I mean, it's all science. But if you think about that, because if just say the subs are both 5 feet apart, the bass wave comes towards you, it hits you at exactly the same time. Now you take one sub and move it an extra 5 feet. So now one sub is 5 feet away from you. One sub is 10 feet away from you. The bass wave from the first sub hits you. The second wave takes twice as long because it's twice as far away. Okay. Or you can leave both subs exactly where they were at 5 feet away. Change the phase knob so that sub is now creating that bass wave a little bit later. Therefore, it seems like it's further away from you than it actually is. That's what we're doing.
Yeah.
Therefore, the interactions with the bass are happening at different places in the room, giving you the option or the ability to have the same interactions happening at all of the seats.
Yeah, what you're talking about here with getting the distance for one of them, then getting the distance for the other one, and then using that to calculate where the phase should be, that would be time aligning the subwoofers, which we got to say, like Gene over at Audioholics, he is an advocate for time aligning the subwoofers. Chris Kyriakakis at Odyssey has been an advocate for time aligning the subwoofers. And sometimes it does work, and sometimes it doesn't. Practically speaking, time aligning your subwoofers doesn't always work out. Works pretty darn well if you have a rectangular room. Got to say that. Works out very nicely if you have a rectangular room. Most of the time, when we're talking about using this phase adjustment method to get uniform bass, it's because you don't have a rectangular room. Maybe you have a rectangular room, but it's got a permanent opening. It's not a rectangle anymore. So the time alignment thing theoretically and practically does work really nicely in a rectangular room. Practically speaking, doesn't always work out so well in real life. So that's why we prefer the trial and error method of adjusting the phase knob.
That's right. Daniel's Sony TV runs Android TV, and he mostly watches content via Plex, Netflix, and using the TV's apps. So he's using the apps within the TV to use Plex and Netflix. He sends the audio back to his Denon AX2200W receiver with HDMI ARC, or audio return HDMI. I said that right? I'm getting fuzzy over here. ARC, which is audio return channel. But audio return channel doesn't support HD audio, only 5.1, Dolby Digital, and DTS. And while he does watch an occasional Blu-ray, he'd really like to have HD audio from streaming sources. So would I? What does...
Well, you can get Dolby Digital Plus from Netflix, and Plex can do lossless audio. So that's...
Yeah, I was going to say Plex can do it, but Vudu has at least their HDX stuff, which is not bad. So I think it's better than what Netflix has. He's leaning towards buying an NVIDIA Shield, but he wants to be sure of a couple things first. So, how does he ensure that the TV and the receiver only display the NVIDIA's Android interface and not the TV's Android interface? Well, No, because he's going to plug directly into the TV, right?
Not if you got an NVIDIA Shield. If you got a Shield, you'd plug that into your Denon X2200W.
That's right. And then you go to that source on your Denon, and then you select the input on your TV to be the Denon input, and you are done. That's how it works.
Yeah. Now, I can see, because if you just press the menu button on the TV's remote,
it's going to bring up
the built-in TV's Android TV interface, because it doubles as the menu. So I can see that, but that actually comes into his second question. So the first part is you're connecting the Shield to your Denon, the Denon to your TV, and as long as you go to the correct inputs, you are looking at the NVIDIA Shield TV. If you're worried about hitting the menu button on your TV's remote, that's coming up next.
So what would be the best way to control the Shield? The current version doesn't have an IR receiver, only Bluetooth. Could use his TV's remote by using HDMI CEC.
Don't do that.
Don't ever do that. Don't ever turn on HDMI CEC. Many remotes these days, Harmony in particular, can control things via Bluetooth.
And I did want to mention, there's two versions of the Shield. There's the regular Shield and there's the Shield Pro. The Shield Pro does have an IR receiver.
Oh, there you go.
It's $100 more. You get a 500 gigabyte hard drive built in, and you get the IR receiver. Right. Is that worth an extra $100 to you? You could put that $100 towards a Harmony hub, right? So either way, because the Harmony hub can control the NVIDIA Shield via Bluetooth. The Harmony hub can send out Bluetooth commands. So
that's all the time
either
spend PlayStation 3, so it works just fine.
Given that, I would prefer for you to have a Harmony remote. I would get the regular Shield and get a Harmony hub, and that way it can send Bluetooth commands to the regular Shield. And that way, once you set up your activities, you can make it so that the menu button no longer activates your TV's menu, accidentally bringing up its whole Android TV thing. Now you can make it in your activity that when you're watching NVIDIA Shield, the menu brings up the NVIDIA Shield's menu, which is what you want. So I think that's the cleanest, best solution.
All right. John. The amplifier on John's Epic Legend subwoofer has blown, so it's time for an upgrade. Is Epic no longer around? Epic's no longer around, right?
Epic's out of business.
Yeah. His room is 5,000 cubic feet and his budget is $1,000. He was considering the HSU VTF 15H Mark II or Power Sound Audio V1500, but he can't find any reviews comparing the two or actually any reviews of the Power Sound Audio V1500 at all. Is one of them better than the other? And are there others he should consider as well? And before we suggest dual subwoofers, his wife will only agree to one subwoofer in one corner, and that's that.
Fair enough.
All right.
We hear you.
Let's see here. Yeah, well,
so he was saying he was he was hoping to keep it under $1,000. Both of the ones he mentioned are a little over $1,000 once you factor in shipping, right? So the VTF 15H is, I think it's $900, but then it has like $160 worth of shipping, so it's a little over $1,000. And the V1500 is $1,099 with free shipping, but that's still over $1,000. So I wanted to mention Power Sound Audio does have the 15V. Very similar model numbers in that, but it's the 15V, which is $950 with free shipping, and it's a down-firing design. So that if you got to get under $1,000, at least there is that option. That's there.
It's still not shipped though, right?
It is shipped. Yeah.
Oh,
the Power Sound Audio does free shipping.
Oh, okay. There you go.
Or shipping included, if you want to think of it that way.
Yeah, these are all good options. I got no problems with any of these. I mean, fill that room. So, have at it. Build a box.
Yeah, I mean, worrying about is the VTF 15H better or worse than the V1500 or the 15V? They're exceedingly comparable.
Yeah,
exceedingly comparable to one another.
This is a 6 of one, half dozen of another. I look at both these subs. I'm like, which one does your wife like better? Build a box.
Yeah, they're all huge. All of them are huge.
Build
they
a
have
box.
5,000 cubic feet, but they're huge.
He could probably hide it in there someplace, but seriously though, build a box. Build a box. I'm going to keep saying it until people do it. And so far, I don't think anybody's done it.
Oh, we've heard. People said they did it. One after the fact, but...
Yeah. Tom has it's not me, different dude. Tom has an NVIDIA Shield and the Marantz SR7010. I'd like to have a Marantz SR7010. The Shield recently got a firmware update and seems to have broken HD audio pass-through. Other people online are complaining about HD audio bit streams no longer working, so NVIDIA is working on a fix. But in the meantime, most people are resorting to PCM audio. How do they survive these first world problems? Tom tried unplugging his NVIDIA Shield from the media player input on the back of his Marantz and plugged it into the aux input instead. And lo and behold, HD audio bitstream pass-through seemed to work just fine again. Atmos was playing in everything. Some of the other HDMI inputs on the back of the Marantz work too, but not the original media player input. So are some of the HDMI inputs on the Marantz different? There's no mention of any of them being different in the manual. There aren't separate settings for individual HDMI inputs, so what's going on here?
I have one guess, and I'm not sure that I'm right, but I have one guess.
You got one more. You got 100, infinity more guesses than I got because I was going with Gremlins. So go.
So the first 4 HDMI inputs 1, 2, 3, and 4, do that whole Insta Preview thingy.
Yeah.
And the rest of the HDMI inputs don't. So it's only HDMI inputs 1 through 4 that do the Insta Preview thingy. I don't know why that would do it, but that's the only difference I can think of. Why one of these
shouldn't make a bit of difference. That shouldn't make any difference whatsoever. It just forces you.
If there's
forces the lock on, basically, right? Keeps the lock on completely.
If there's some weird handshake issue going on, and Tom said some people were talking about there is a weird handshake issue that's messing up this HD audio pass through. So maybe the Insta Preview thing is like, oh, I can only send stereo audio because it's an Insta Preview. I don't know why. That's the only difference I know about.
I'll be honest with you, dude. I would never unplug that thing again. even if
I
they
mean, if
send
you
a
found something
firmware
that's
up,
working.
hey, if they send a firmware update like it totally works now, it totally works. Do not unplug it. Do not unplug that thing. I would never unplug. I am not a superstitious man, but straight up, dude, don't unplug that thing. And every time the power goes out, freak out just a little bit, little panic attack until it comes back on and it works. That is literally would be my game plan. That would be my personal game plan. I'm freaking out every time the power goes out. I'm sorry. Stuff like this happens, and yeah, Rob's probably right. It's something, but what? Pfft, you got no idea. I mean,
it's the only difference I can think of, so
yeah, I got nothing.
that's my guess.
Another John. This one on Facebook. John is sitting 7 feet away from a 43-inch Samsung Plasma, so he asks, should he want a larger TV, and if so, how big? You would like, if you are me, you would like at least an 85 to 90-inch screen.
From 7 feet, come on. You're the one who completely underestimated your viewing distance from your current 92-inch screen.
No one cares what I estimated or didn't estimate. You want big, boy. 43 is like, do you have binoculars when you're watching
come
this
on,
thing?
it's not
Come
that small.
on. It's very small. You have to squint to read the text on the little crawl till it goes across.
Well, I'll put it this way, John. SEMPTI would recommend that you have a slightly larger screen. They would recommend you have something between 50 and 55 degrees. All right, 55-degree screen, which is kind of the common screen size these days.
No.
From 7 feet away would give you a 32-degree field of view, which is ever so slightly larger than SEMPTI's 30-degree recommended field of view.
Too small.
That's for HD TV, right? Yeah, I tend to find that to be on the small side. No, a 65-inch screen gives you a 37-degree field of view. That's pretty darn nice. An 80-inch screen would give you a 45-degree field of view, which is about as big as I would ever want to go. Now, 80 inches from 7 feet away, that looks pretty darn big. And 45 degrees is quite a wide viewing angle, gotta say.
I'll go with 80. I'll stick with 80. Though 85 would be nice. Yeah, dude, 43 is way too small.
I would easily suggest a 55-inch to 65-inch screen size from 7 feet away. And I know, to a lot of people, they're like, whoa, 65-inch TV from 7 feet away? If you want a cinematic experience, 37-degree field of view, it's pretty nice.
Yeah, that's what you... I mean, it depends on what you really want. If you're looking for something that's just something to watch the news on, or American Idol. Is that even still on? Is American Idol still on?
No, that's done.
Okay,
it's all The Voice now.
Never saw that show. So, I mean, if you're just looking for something to whatever, that's fine. But if you want like a cinematic experience, then yes, 65 and up is what I think you should be going with. And, 85 is probably the right size. Monty had finally talked himself into buying an Oppo BDP203, but then the whole HDMI 2.1 thing happened. Since $550 is a lot to spend on hope, should he wait to buy an Ultra HD Blu-ray player until HDMI 2.1 gets sorted out, or purchase less expensive LG UHD player and see what happens? $300 is still a lot, but it's still 150 less than 550. So, or 250 less than
250 less.
So my math skills are weak today. And since his 2016 model LG B6 OLED doesn't support HDMI 2.1, does it even matter? Dude, isn't 2.1 supposed to be for like 8K? Isn't that what it's supposed to be for? Or
I mean, it's such a unclear hodgepodge right now. So HDMI 2.1 in the spec, whole bunch of capabilities that might be. I mean, again, HDMI doesn't really want us talking about spec numbers because the spec number doesn't tell you what the TV or the device does. It's just what this port is capable of passing through it, right? So the whole 48 gigabits per second 8K resolution support, you do not need to worry about that. That is part of the HDMI 2.1 spec. It's a potential thing that could be supported. You totally don't need to worry about that for Ultra HD Blu-ray 4K. That's out of the picture. But there are some other features like the enhanced audio return channel that could actually pass lossless audio from a streaming service that's coming directly out of your TV to your AV receiver. That could be kind of a nice feature. What else is there? There's if Samsung's HDR10 Plus catches on, they're like, yeah, it's going to need to be part of the HDMI 2.1 spec. And they're saying that for those types of features, it's possible some devices will be able to get that via firmware, because that's a feature update, not a bandwidth update. You're never going to be able to update the bandwidth.
Right.
But you might be able to update some of the features. So this is going to get really messy because the spec number's really not going to line up with the capabilities. And if you're talking about adding, say, Samsung's HDR10 Plus, that's a feature that might be able to get added to an existing chipset, and the Oppo is a very likely candidate because it's got plenty of processing power in that chipset that they have. If there's any current player that's going to be upgradable to HDR10 Plus, it's probably the Oppo. So
I'm of the opinion that 2.1 is not something I'm worrying about. Like if I was purchasing,
you just
right
can't.
Now,
if you do, you're never going to buy anything.
Yeah, that right now it's not vaporware, but it's like theoretical wear. Yeah, it is coming.
It's unclear. It's not even totally nailed down or anything.
Yeah, it's coming, but it's not something to wait for. And I think that it's unlikely that 6 months from now, HDMI 2.1 is going to come out, and everything that's 2.0 is going to have to be scrapped and upgraded to 2.1. I just don't see it.
I mean, if we do 8K, then eventually that's going to be the case. But
I am more likely to see like 2.0 B or something like that to come out.
Well, that actually already exists, because that added the hybrid log gamma is 2.0B.
What I'm saying is that you might see iterations of it. They might call it 2.1 or whatever, but I don't see this 8K stuff with the higher bandwidth as being something that's going to be required for what we have anytime in the near future. 8K is not. I mean, I know they're saying it's coming, but a lot of things are coming. Like all those James Cameron movies apparently are coming.
Honestly, I think buying the Oppo Ultra HD Blu-ray player is a pretty safe bet. If anything's going to get updated, that's the one that's going to get updated.
Yeah, I believe. So. I agree. All right, Scott. Scott has some M&K satellite speakers from 30 years ago that he'd like to upgrade. His room is 23 feet wide by 15 feet long. He'd like to stick with bookshelf speakers. Large bookshelf speakers are fine. He's aiming for $500 a pair to $1,000 per pair. So what do we suggest? Oh, there's a lot of good stuff out there, dude, from that price range for bookshelves. Will's kind of your oyster there. I would look at the usual suspects. He's going to say Ascend. I'm going to say Aperion Audio. So let's just get those out of the way.
Ascend, Aperion.
SVS is going to be on the list for sure. Free shipping both ways. Kef is on the list. Accessories for Less.
Accessories for Less sells Kef. Yep.
So you want to look there for those. You want to go to your local stores, especially hi-fi stores with open box. Anything that's returned, anything that's dinged, you want to take a listen to any of that.
I would add NHT to this list.
I thought about that, but his room is awfully big. 23 feet wide, 15 feet long.
It's not that big.
NHT's a little. I don't know. It depends on how.
I'm talking about their C series, not their Super Sats.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah.
Go right up to their C series, because those are $1,000 a pair right now for their C series bookshelves. It's at the high end of your budget, but it's there. But I mean, Scott, I would start with what you can get locally, so that you have return policy, and the companies that offer free two-way shipping, because. Essentially, why not? I mean, give yourself the opportunity. It's been 30 years since you bought new speakers. You can get really nice bookshelf speakers in this price range. It's worth it to take the time to audition them in your own home with your setup, with your ears, with your music, and find something that you really, really like. Because, first of all, you have some pretty decent speakers already. So you want to make sure that whatever you buy is really your favorite. So it's worth taking the time. So Ascend, not all of their speakers are free two-way shipping, but the ones in your price range are. You're mostly going to want to look at the CMT340s and the Sierra 1s. Those are the two that are in your price range and offer free two-way shipping. Aperion, you can look at the Veris Grand 2 bookshelf speakers. They're backordered right now because Aperion's still in the process of moving their entire warehouse. Right. But they'll be back up and running shortly. SVS, you can look at their Ultra bookshelves. They fit in there, free two-way shipping. And then, go to all your local stores and whatever you can audition with a return policy.
You're going to be able to find, for sure, Kef nearby. Kef is everywhere.
And
then
I mean,
you can buy.
give
you can buy
Klipsch a try. Why not? Klipsch going to be somewhere local.
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Give him a try. Get so that you have the experience of going. This is what I like. This is what I don't like.
And listen to stuff
totally
way
worth
above your price range too. Don't be afraid that
Sure.
that's too expensive for me. Well, to listen to it anyways. I'm not going to kick you out for listening.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, because we can't just point you to one pair right now and go,
Right.
that is clearly
That's
the
the
one
one.
to get for between 500 and 1,000. I mean, there is such a variety, and a lot of them are good. I mean, if you picked one of these speakers and said those were my favorite, we're going to go awesome. Neither of us is going to say, oh, you should have picked something else. Totally not the case.
No.
So since there are at least a minimum of 3 opportunities to listen to speakers completely risk-free, absolutely do that.
All right, we're going to stop. I know we have like
Okay.
8 or
We've got
10 more.
2/3 of the way through, but we have way more questions than normal.
Yeah, we have an inordinate amount of questions. So we have Dan. I'm going to try to scroll through this. Wesley,
Okay.
Henry, Luke. Luke has got a lot of questions. Hold on. Ty. Gary, of course. Infinite Gary. It's got to be in there. Topher. Got to be the same dude, right? It's got to be Topher Grayson, even though his last name starts with an H here. Christopher. He's as a pseudonym. It's Topher H. Tara. We're going to get a question from Tara next week. It's even got a
Diagram?
I thought it says primary seat, but I thought it said Armani seat. I was like, okay, well, I guess whatever. And Justin Not Bieber is also on here as well, so a whole bunch. I would have gone a little bit longer, but I am not feeling well, and I'm getting worse by the second, so I would like to go. I do want to thank our listeners of the week. I want to thank Brandon and Tyrone for going to www.avrant.com, clicking on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link, and leaving us a donation. That helps pay for our podcasting, hosting fees, and other things. So thank you, Brandon. Thank you, Tyrone.
Yeah, Brandon, Tyrone, thank you both very much for those donations.
And thank you, James and Tara, for talking us up to Outdoor Speaker Depot and Accessories for Less, respectively. Thank you, James. Thank you, Tara.
Yeah, James, Tara, thank you both so much, and congrats on your purchases, and I hope you're enjoying them.
And because I'm not feeling well, I'm going to make this short. If you would like your question answered on our podcast, and we would love to answer your question, we really would, as much as I sometimes complain about it. We love to answer your questions on this podcast. Do it by emailing us at question@avrant.com. For AVRant, I'm Tom Andry.
Oh my goodness, I am Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.
I said it was going to be short. I was shortening it. That was short.